Alright everybody, so this is the spoiler section for Force Awakens, and there's a ton of stuff to go through. I had a little list on my phone, the battery was dying so I can't have it in front of me, but there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. The first thing kind of has to be the fact that they killed off Han. That really sucks. That was like the only thing I didn't like, honestly, about the movie, but it was a great moment for the movie. I just didn't like it because, of course, they killed off, one of the main characters, and it was a great dramatic moment, of course. I knew it was going to happen. Honestly, as soon as Han and Chewie split up, the first thing I thought was, I don't want either of them to die. That was the first thing I thought. And then, of course, once, when Kylo Ren is just walking by himself and Han sees him, I'm like, if he goes out there, he will die. And I figured he would. And, of course, he walks out there. There was no music. That was a huge, huge clue. I was like, well, it was just blatant. It was really obvious. I do kind of wish that was another thing. Like, aside from the fact that I wish he wasn't killed off, I would have liked for it to have been a bit of a shock. Although my heart was racing like crazy because I was just hoping that somehow it wouldn't happen. So, it's one of those things where it's like, it wasn't out of nowhere. Like, even the people around him, like, people were kind of whispering, like, oh, he's going to kill him. Like, yeah, he's going to kill him. Like, there's literally no music. He's walking out on this thing, which really should have had some rails. They could just fall him right off. But it was like, no music, nothing. I'm like, he's going to kill him. And it wasn't surprising when he did it. It still sucked that it happened. And it was somewhat surprising, but because, they did it. But at the same time, it was just like, oh, there's like 5 minutes of sheer silence and just talking. And you kind of knew where it was going to head. But, like I said, it was still a great moment for the movie. And I really hope for the rest of the franchise, like, I hope that it does have a great impact on what the characters do and say in the future films. And I'd actually heard that Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to get killed off because he didn't want to keep playing him, for a super long time. So I guess he got what he wanted. And maybe that, that was only a couple months ago when I'd heard that, so he knew what was going to happen anyway, and, it's kind of exactly what he wanted to happen. But it was interesting for that to happen. I love the part, after it happened, they show Leia, because she felt it in the Force. I was like, that was, a great moment, because she's, not as strong in the Force as Luke, but she's definitely Force sensitive, so I was like, that was really cool to see that happen. It was just very interesting, and then Kylo Ren as a character, he and Rey have, like, just really crazy storylines. Like, all three of the new characters, like Finn, Rey, and Kylo Ren, I count them as the three new people because I assume, I don't know what's going to happen with Finn, because, of course, and this is one of the things I loved about basically all the marketing. It was like, hey, check out Finn, he's the new Jedi and stuff. And then the movie happens, and it's like, oh, crap, it's actually Rey. That was one of my favorite things. I was so happy that it was just a random twist. It was like all the marketing and stuff, the posters, the trailers, everything. It was like, Finn's going to be, the new Jedi of the series. And it turned out, that it's actually Rey, and then obviously all the speculations there. But all the three characters have great storylines. Like, Ren is, I'm just going to call him Ren, because I'm not going to go through this whole name. But he, his kind of teetering back and forth, and he's talking to Darth Vader's mask. He's like, I feel the call to the light side, and he feels like he has to kill his own father in order to officially be on the dark side of the Force. And his temper tantrums when things get screwed up, and he just, boom, lightsaber on, he's just like destroying stuff. It was cool to see that because Star Wars is typically very stoic people. Like, some people make jokes here and there and stuff like that, but normally everything is like very calm jokes, and that's pretty much it. There's some laughter here and there, but it's normally like stoic people and very calm stuff. This movie was not that, and I actually enjoyed it for that. We had a main villain who wasn't Darth Vader. He wasn't just like, I am Kylo Ren, I'm powerful, I destroyed this, I destroyed that. He was teetering on the edge constantly. He wanted to be Darth Vader. He wanted to be his grandfather, and it's like he was like the ultimate villain, and that's who he wants to become. And he has his own master who is like just this creepy, messed up face, alien, who, of course, I think, like everyone, I got tricked by it at first too because he was like giant, but apparently their holograms have become super freaking amazing, which I kind of loved. I was like, oh, that's cool that that was a hologram, because it shows that the technology did get a little bit better, you know, over time. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But all three of them just really interesting characters. Rey, I can't wait to see what they do with her. I love the fact that it's like a female Jedi, because of course it's been Luke and his father, so it's just been like guys. So I'm looking forward to seeing like a female Jedi as like the main focus of the three films. I would personally still like to see Finn become a Jedi, because at this point he's kind of just like the guy with PTSD who, you know, he wanted to run away, but he has feelings for Ren. Maybe that was another thing. I was like, I wonder if they're gonna have a relationship or not, because in his experience, he kind of doesn't know anything. He's almost like a newborn, you know, kid in this world, to be totally honest. He's, of course, lived, but that's kind of how he is. Like, he just, certain things he just didn't seem to understand. And, like, just the way he acted, it was pretty interesting to watch him. And he just wants to kind of help people after, you know, his first mission, which I didn't expect. I didn't think that that was going to be, like, his first time ever during the opening of this movie. So that surprised me when he was like, you know, my first battle happened and I took off. I was like, oh, that was the first time? I just thought he never was in, like, massacre mode. I figured he'd been in, like, a battle or something, but that was just them killing a bunch of people, and that's when he realized, like, oh, crap, you know, we're the bad guys. I didn't think it was just, like, the first time period. It was like, oh, crap, one of my friends died, and that was all there was to it. So that kind of surprised me, but, you know, he mentions he was just taken from his family. There are online rumors where people think, like, he might be the grandson of Mace Windu, which I think is interesting. That would be kind of cool. If that's how they did that, that would be very interesting. But I like how they did that with his character, and he never even had a name, and so he just, you know, randomly gets Finn as a name from Poe. But I like all of them. I'm very curious to see what they do. And Rey goes off with Luke at the end, and Finn's knocked out because of, you know, the slash across his back, which is very great in how they did that. And then we have Ren going off to be with his master and complete his training. So he might get a new lightsaber, I think, because I'm pretty sure he lost his at the end of the fight with Rey when he was knocked down after she cut his face. I think he dropped his, and then the Earth split open, or the planet, it's in the Earth. But the planet splits, and I'm pretty sure his dropped. So I think we'll get a new lightsaber out of him. I'd love to see Rey get her own lightsaber, because as much as I love, you know, Luke's lightsaber, it's literally been in all, you know, both trilogies, because it was Anakin's first, and of course then it was Luke's after that, and it was technically like only the first two until he lost it in Empire Strikes Back, which I can't wait to get that answer, because it was, of course, like, that's a great question for another time. So I can't wait for them to officially explain how that happened, because, you know, Luke ended up on the bottom of an antenna on Cloud City, so who knows where his lightsaber, you know, really ended up. And just someone just found his hand in the lightsaber. It's like, ooh, just toss that off and now I have a lightsaber. But somehow it ended up there. A very interesting thing during that scene, when Rey opened up that box and she saw the lightsaber, there was a little thing right next to the lightsaber that I thought for sure was going to be the second piece of the map, because they mentioned, like, there are other parts to it. I thought that that was going to take place, and then that didn't happen at all. And somehow at the end of the movie, they have, like, the full thing. And that was something, that was, like, the only thing in this movie that just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Like, R2, you know, he wakes up at the end of the movie, and it's like, oh, you know, show us what you found. And I was trying to figure out, like, was he searching, like, the galaxy-wide web or something this whole time? Like, how did he get that map that he didn't have at all? Because C-3PO says, like, oh, he basically went to sleep once Luke vanished. And then he just woke up at the end and it was like, oh, he found something, let's see what you found. And it's like, what was he searching? Like, they didn't say anything like that. It didn't make sense to me, and that's kind of something they just kind of seem to throw in there. Like, I've never seen that happen before in Star Wars, where it's like, oh, like internet, basically, galaxy-wise, you know, galaxy-wide internet or something. He just woke up and it was like, oh, here's this map I have. It's like, that seemed really weird. It was like R2 felt the Force or something. Like, oh, time for me to wake up. And then he somehow found something while in the powered down state. So I have to assume that's what that was. He was somehow searching something. I just don't. I didn't understand it at all. If you guys can explain it, please do. Because when I saw it, it just confused me. Like he woke up, which I personally I didn't think he could just wake up himself. I thought he was in a powered down state. Like he wanted to be that way, and then someone did that to him. But I guess it makes sense that he could power himself down. But the fact that it seemed like he just found that new information, like a new piece of the puzzle, was so confusing to me. I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get what's happening. And I don't know if that was a deleted scene or what, or maybe that cube in a deleted scene did come into play, and maybe BB-8 couldn't figure out what was happening, so they put it inside of R2. But it was confusing to me that he just randomly had the map and it's like, show us what you found, but he's been powered down this whole time. So I don't know, but that I just wanted to really put that out there. That was like the one thing that, like, just logically speaking, that was the one thing that bugged me. Like, the Han Solo stuff, just sad, but the R2 thing was just like, that doesn't seem like it makes any sense to me. So, wanted to really put that one out there. Lightsaber battle, very awesome. I love the fact that the choreography wasn't super stylized, it was just people fighting, so that was really fun. All the references to the old movies, very cool. The full on, it was literally just a Death Star. Excuse me, the end of episode 4. That was just the Death Star trench run. Like, as soon as they went down, I was like, man, they love their trenches, don't they? I know there's a lot of talk about The Force Awakens basically being, pace-wise, it's exactly like, episode 4. Personally, I don't really see it that way. I mean, I definitely understand, and the ending is seriously episode 4 plus Return of the Jedi, battle on the planet. Or just lightsaber battle in general, it's just on the planet. But I think it stands out more than enough, to kind of do its own thing. It certainly is kind of the same way. It's like, oh, Tatooine, Millennium Falcon. They find Han and Chewie after getting the Falcon instead of before. But yeah, it definitely goes the same pace. And Han is kind of the Obi-Wan in this sense. Really, he is kind of the Obi-Wan to Rey, and kind of the Finn at the same time. And then Finn's kind of like the distant character who's Finn is, I feel like, really on his own. Finn and Ren are kind of the two that I feel like are really on their own as far as who you can connect them to from the original trilogy. But of course, tons of connections, tons of references. When Chewie was injured, Finn pulls out the little ball that Luke was training with that shot like the practice lasers at him. They had a full-on Hoth moment at the end of the movie when Rey uses the Force to get the lightsaber herself, which was still really cool. I was like, that's just all the Hoth right there. That's just Hoth. And I was totally fine with it. Lots of references through dialogue. Leia saying that I know they're still good in Ren, which was really great. And I that was probably my favorite dialogue-wise callback to the older movies, because it tied into a really important moment with Luke about his father, and it was still about very important, family members. And instead of it being a father, it was a son. I was like, I really loved that moment, and that was definitely my favorite reference to the old movies, because it was just really good. I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review. I do believe that it was a reference to Spaceballs when they went to the cantina, or I don't know if you could really call it a cantina, but they go to like the club or whatever you want to call it, and they have that droid. It's much darker than the one from Spaceballs, but it reminds me so much of it. I don't know if it was meant to be that way or it was just random, but I was like, I think that's a reference to Spaceballs. So it's right when they get to that first new planet after Jakku, and they go into the bar. I just feel like that was Spaceballs. So you guys can let me know what you thought about that. I thought for sure, I'm like, that's Spaceballs. It has to be Spaceballs. Let's see what else they did. I certainly loved, I mentioned I loved all the practical stuff. That was really great. I loved seeing all the practical stuff, like seeing the actual X-Wing in the beginning. I was really sad when they blew it up. I was like, I would have loved to have just had that, for even if it was for a day, if I could have had that. But it was like, they built it and they blew it up. I was like, geez, that makes me really sad. But it was a pretty cool moment. Ren's use of the Force was some of the best I've ever seen. Just the way they did it, him, aside from his like tantrums and stuff where he would destroy everything, which is cool for his character because of him going back and forth between the dark and light. When he was in like his Sith mode and he would use the Force, It was great. Like when he did it the first time, and it's just like boom, and Poe was frozen in place, and so was that laser. I was like, that is amazing. And he's really, you can tell he was powerful in the Force because it was stuck like that whole time they were talking, and then it finally goes away. You know, after Ren looks over at Finn, and because he senses it, and then he turns and he finally does it. That was like I think 5 minutes worth of screen time, and then it finally just went and it it hit the middle of the tower. I was like, that looked really really cool. That was my favorite time he did it. When he did it with Rey, it was still pretty cool because I like the fact that she was pointing at him and he basically like forced her arm backwards and then she was frozen. He knocked her out. He was doing mind reading and stuff. So they really tapped into some of the greater parts of the Force. We still didn't see anyone do like the super speed stuff, which they might shy away from that probably. Even in the prequels, they didn't really do it enough. They kind of showed it off like one time in Episode 1, and then it was like, all right, well, no, they got super speed, but they don't ever show it. The super jumps they did like crazy in the prequels. They did that because it's super easy to just jump, but they never did the super speed. So now every time I see stuff, it's like, they should just use super speed. And it kind of annoys me that that's in the franchise now because all I think of is like, they should use super speed. So I'm kind of fine because all these people are younger, so they wouldn't have that much of a connection. So I'm totally fine not seeing super speed or anything like that. But I certainly love the way he used the Force and just that first time because the blast was like a supercharged blast and it was just like a lightning bolt and the sound was amazing on it. It was such a random thing, but sometimes there are just certain things I pick up on for sound, and that was one of the moments. Ren's lightsaber, definitely, I really noticed it in this movie. I noticed it a little during the trailers, but actually hearing it in the theater, I was like, just great attention to detail. Yeah, I love all the new characters, good and bad. I like the new characters. Curious to see what's going to happen with Smoke. I want to see him in person, and considering what he looks like, I don't know if they'll do a real-life version of him at all, because I know Andy Serkis did the mocap for him. So I'm assuming that's how it's going to be, but I feel like that's an easy enough mask to do practically. So I'm kind of wondering if they're going to go that route when he's in person, and it just looks CG when it's the hologram, which clearly the hologram technology has gotten much better in Star Wars, so I kind of love that, because he shows up giant, and I was like, holy crap, they have like a giant Sith in this? That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then, it turns out to be like all hologram. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And it shows, it clearly shows what Smoke thinks of himself, because it's like, I want you guys to install this hologram thing where I'm like 800 feet tall and you see my chair and everything. And I'm literally looking down. I guess he'd have to be looking down at the thing. I don't know how the teleporters or the holograms work. I've always wondered that, because it's like, how, like, do you see what they're saying? Or, because people be at tables, doesn't like ever across the board though, all sci-fi stuff. I'm always like, do they have to look at, are they seeing what we're seeing when we see them? And it's just really funny. But I can't wait to see what happens there. Like I said, I think Ren might get his own lightsaber. I certainly, like I said, I love the choreography. I loved, for sure, I think one of my favorite moments was when Rey and Finn took the Millennium Falcon. That first, I guess technically it's still a firefight, but that was amazing to me. I loved seeing that, and they're in tight spaces and stuff, and it's not like, like they did it before, like Episode 3 did it, and it was just like, here's war. The opening of that movie is just like, this is happening everywhere, and then this was just like Millennium Falcon, 2 TIE fighters, and it was just great. They're like flying through Star Destroyers and stuff. Rey is like a super epic pilot. Her and Poe together, I'm just like, man, that makes me want to be a pilot, even though I have no reason to do that. But they were pulling off crazy maneuvers, like Rey, when she like flipped the Millennium Falcon outside of this Star Destroyer when it was messed up, and she like flips it at the last second. She flipped the ship upside down and let it drop until like the last second so Finn could get the shot off. I was like, man, all that looked amazing. Poe, when he was at the end and he has to go in on his own, he was like the only person that can make it through like that little crack by turning his X-Wing sideways and keep it steady enough, and all the other stuff during the first fight. And, Finn's just like, holy crap, he's one hell of a pilot and stuff. I was like, man, they just make stuff look so freaking sweet. I was like, that's something else we don't see in Star Wars. And I mentioned again, the blasters for the stormtroopers looked really awesome this time compared to clone troopers where it's just CG everything. It was just so much better. Like it was just really fun to watch. I'm sure there's something else I got randomly on my phone for sure, but obviously there are like a million different things to talk about for Star Wars. Um, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think that's everything. I think. Oh, the battle on Jakku. That was pretty interesting to see all the stuff. The old Star Destroyers, old X-wing, Walker on the Sand Planet. Every time I see that, even I've seen it in like Star Wars Rebels. It's weird to see anything that was on Hoth on any other planet. Now I'm like, oh, I relate that so much to a snow planet, and now it's on like a desert planet and stuff like that. It's so weird to see that happen. And technically, they were in I believe. No, they weren't. No, they weren't the AT-AT walkers, but it was like the little skinny walkers. Um, in Return of the Jedi, I think one of them. I don't know. There may have been one AT-AT walker, like one of the really big ones in Return of the Jedi. I can't remember right now, but I thought it was cool to see all the decay and stuff. And you can play that if you happen to have Star Wars Battlefront. You can play the Battle of Jakku. So I'm kind of looking forward to that because I haven't even touched that game yet. Now I kind of want to get into all my Star Wars games that I got. But that was really cool just to see that decay. It was actually pretty awesome. The last thing is actually the First Order and the way that they look. And I knew this before before the movie came out. I think it was like a month and a half ago or something that I heard this. But they're based off of Nazis. Like they're based off of the Third Reich and stuff like that. And when I was watching, I was like, I'm pretty sure people would realize that even without having heard that story, because it's like the way they're dressed was kind of obvious, and it's slightly different than how they used to dress. It's still very similar with like just the straight jackets, but it's slightly different. Of course, like the full-on speech was very like full-on Nazi stuff, and then they all put up one arm, and I was like, okay, that's definitely Nazis. Like no one could miss that if you know about Hitler and Nazis, and I don't know how you couldn't, but I was like, that's a very obvious connection. So they've certainly made great people to hate. That's for sure. Like, I mean, these people are much worse than the Empire, and they're technically, they're the First Order. They're no longer the Empire. So they do seem more evil, and they seem like they've done worse things. And of course, Finn, excuse me, Finn, having been a part of that does make it an even better connection to how bad they really are. Because he talks about how they'll slaughter people and stuff. They never would say anything like that in the old movies. It was just like, I mean, granted, they blew up a full planet, but it wasn't like visceral words where it was someone who knew and who lived it and was scared. Like, they will destroy us and torture us and slaughter everyone here. It was just like, yeah, we're the bad guys. It's Darth Vader, Force chokes, Death Star, and that was it. But it feels more intimate. How evil they really are, and I personally I think that's actually really good. I guess commander or whatever, the guy who gave the speech, I can't remember his name. Unfortunately, he's like the only other. There's only 3 bad guys, and I can't remember his name. But I kind of like how he is kind of on equal ground with Ren. I personally think that's very cool because, like I said in my review, it doesn't give them that Darth Vader status either. It keeps them on even ground, even when they're talking with Smoke. When they have Rey and she escapes, he walks in and is like, how did she escape? And, or it was like, what about the droid? He comes in the middle of their conversation. He's like, oh, he thought that we didn't need the droid. He thought that he could get everything we needed. So now the droid's gone and we have nothing. And I was like, it's kind of awesome to see someone stand up to the Force user, because you don't do that to Darth Vader. Like, it's Darth Vader. All he did was Force choke people that screwed up, and that just doesn't happen. We saw it a little bit, which once again, great show of Force for Ren when he does like the drag and he does like the bring him closer for the Force choke to do it with his own hands. I love that scene. Like, it was just cool. Like his toes are like gliding across the ground. I was like, that is very cool. And they did a lot of the effects with his Force use, and it was just like booms and stuff like that. And I was like, I love how that sounds. Like, once again, just the way they did it, just all of it together, visually and auditorially, it just great combination. But that's pretty much everything, I think, spoiler wise, that I can have. I think I went over everything on my list. Rey as a Jedi, just in general, I love that. Just the fact that they did the twist was just great. So that's like, I do still hope, like I said, I hope Finn becomes a Jedi. All the speculations as far as Rey being Luke's daughter, I don't know what to think about that, because they switch up, the extended universe stuff. Ren is, like, his actual name was Ben Solo, which Ben is actually supposed to be Luke's kid. In the comic books, it's Ben Skywalker, and Ben has a wife who his nephew kills. Like, in the comic books, Ren's name is Jason Solo, and he actually killed Luke's wife because she found out he was turning to the dark side. And Ren actually gets killed by his twin sister. So it seems like they kind of took that aspect out, and they only have one kid, Han and Leia. And Luke may or may not have a daughter in Rey. And when she had the visions and all that stuff, I believe I went through all that already. But, she has all the visions, so it's just like, I don't know what to really expect from that. Personally, I just don't believe that she's his daughter. They do vaguely kind of have, like, when she has the visions and all that stuff with his lightsaber, they're jumping back and forth through time. I may have said that this is my second time doing this, so honestly I can't remember if I said that in this video, so hopefully not. But when they're jumping through time, it's like she's a kid, they jump forward, there's a scene with Ren, and he's like in the rain and everything, and none of that stuff was in this movie. There's the shot with Luke when he's with R2 and he has a gold hand, but at the end of the movie he has a silver hand, so that I initially thought that was just in the past, but those could all have been scenes outside of her actual childhood flashback. Those could all be scenes from the next film, and they'll turn them into, like, full shots. So I don't really know what to think. I'm not sure what that means. Ren, when he was reading Rey's mind, he's like, oh, you envision like a big ocean and stuff with a little island on it, and of course that's where she's at the end with Luke. But once again, she hadn't even seen Kylo Ren by the time she had that vision, and they were face to face, and she saw him killing a bunch of people. So it's like, it doesn't really mean anything that she, just because he read something Force-wise, that doesn't mean a single thing. Like, oh, that instantly makes, her his daughter. That's just like, well, that's the Force. That, like, even in the original trilogies, they do talk about, like, oh, you can kind of see the future a little bit if you're that connected to the Force. So it really doesn't mean, like, oh, because he had that vision and that's where she ended up, that she's so connected to Luke that, that means that's his daughter. But who knows? Like, that could have been Luke that left. No reason, no idea why. Also, and I know I didn't mention this time, Han mentions that Luke started that school and he left when Ren turned to the dark side. That means there has to be other people that he was training. There were other Force-sensitive kids that kind of got abandoned by Luke. So we're going to get to meet them, I would assume. Hopefully through the movies. They might do that comic-wise. But there could be other people out there where it's like, well, our master kind of left us. We got to train ourselves in the ways of the Force because we want to know and maybe be better, than Kylo Ren. He turned to the dark side. We don't want to do that, but we do want to be powerful Jedi to help those who need it. So I think we might get to see those people in the next couple of films. I hope that, that does take place, but I think that's everything. Definitely want to know, spoiler-wise, everything you guys thought about the movie. Your speculations as far as Rey being Luke's daughter, possibly. What's going to happen with Finn, if he might become a Jedi, he'll just be the guy with PTSD, because that's kind of what he is in this movie. But I want to know your speculations for what you guys thought about it, what you thought about, in general, just what has happened so far. So please comment below, let me know. And of course, thank you guys for watching this incredibly long spoiler video.